So we've just built this beautiful machine here. It looks awesome, but now what do you do with it? The SSD or the hard drive doesn't come with Windows. We need to install that. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to flash your BIOS, how to configure your BIOS, how to install Windows, then how to install all the drivers, getting rid of all the little bangs in Device Manager, and then how to tweak your system to get some better performance inside of your system so that you can play your games and everything. I start you from 0 all the way to 100%, not only in the build video that I'll link up later on, but also afterwards. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. So before we actually turn on the computer, we need to take care of a few things. First off, we need to download and prepare a thumb drive with the Windows 11 installer. Nope, it does not come on the SSDs when you buy them. You need to install it. Then second, we need to download all the drivers and the BIOS for the motherboard and for all the hardware in the machine as well. For that, we'll need a second thumb drive. If anything, a second thumb drive just for the BIOS, but I'll show you what I mean in 1 second. So as I mentioned, for Windows 10, we'll come to this website and I'll have links for everything in the description down below. And then we'll just click download Windows 11 and then we'll select the create Windows 11 installation media and we'll run it through there. I'll link down below as well a video on how to make that media. So we'll just skip that for now. So this is the case that I'm using. There is no software we need to download for that, but it does come with RGB lighting. So for that, we'll come over here to the Corsair, the iCUE site, and I'll have links down below as well. And we'll download the iCUE software for the iCUE hub and for all the iCUE RGB lighting. Then we'll come over here to the MSI Mag B850 motherboard. Now on this site is where we download the latest and the greatest BIOS. So it's incredibly important when you're building a brand new PC and when you install Windows to install it on the latest and the greatest BIOS. Now that's important because at that time they have a bunch of new features and security patches and support for new RAM, for old RAM, for different profiles, for new CPUs, old CPUs. The newer BIOS allows for all of that good stuff. And then that way you can install Windows knowing that you have the latest and the greatest and there isn't a potential issue. I go into more details down in the video below that you can check out a little bit later on, but let's keep going. So after you download that latest BIOS, you'll come over here to drivers and then you'll select your operating system and then we'll skip on the chipset and I'll show you that in 1 second. We'll go to onboard audio drivers and we'll download the latest and greatest audio driver in case there's any more. Then we'll go to LAN. We'll download the Bluetooth drivers, the Ethernet drivers for the Ethernet port where you would connect your Ethernet cable, and then for Wi-Fi as well down here. And then we can come over here to onboard PIDE or SATA drivers and we'll download the latest and greatest SATA driver as well. And we may use that during the install and then we'll come under here under firmware and then we'll update the ASMedia firmware on the motherboard for the ASMedia SATA controller. And lastly, we'll go to utility and others so that we can download MSI Center to help us control RGB lighting on the motherboard. All right, so that's here. Now, if you remember on the driver side, I said don't download the chipset driver here because maybe they have that on the AMD website. AMD makes the chipset, so they're going to make the software first. You'll see here January 22nd. So we'll come to AMD.com, then we'll click resources and support. Then under Radeon graphics and AMD chipset, we'll select drivers. And then here under browse products, we'll select chipset and then AM5 because that's the CPU we're using. And then before it didn't have B850, but now it does. So we'll select B850 for the B850 chipset of this motherboard and we'll click submit. Then we'll select the operating system. We're going to be installing Windows 11. Here is the latest and greatest chipset driver. You'll see here the release date is February 25th. So this driver is newer than this driver. So always download it from the manufacturer of the chipset. Coming back over here to resources and support, let's go back under Radeon graphics and AMD chipset and go to drivers. Now this time we'll select graphics because we're using the 9070 card. So select that here, then Radeon RX, then Radeon RX 9000 series, and finally Radeon RX 9070, and then click submit. We'll select Windows 11 and I don't like to do the auto detect. I like to download the latest and the greatest. You'll see here there's 25.3.2, then there's 25.3.1 WICL. WICL's safe, but I like to download the latest, so I'll download this optional driver. So when you're done downloading everything, you'll come under here and then we'll select this little folder here. That way it takes us directly to this folder here. Now this is where everything is that you've just downloaded. So we can select everything here. Let's get rid of some stuff that I've downloaded in between. We don't need the media creation toolkit. I already showed you how to make that on the separate thumb drive. Then we'll copy this all over. Now, before we can actually copy it, we'll have to insert that thumb drive that we're going to use for the BIOS and for the drivers. Then we'll right click on File Explorer and we'll select File Explorer here. And now we'll go to this PC. Now you need to find which is that thumb drive that you've inserted. For me, it's this drive named whatever. So in order for your motherboard to be able to read that thumb drive, it needs to be FAT32. We'll right click on this thumb drive. Again, making sure that that's the thumb drive we want to erase because we're going to erase it. And then we'll click Format. And then here under Format, we're going to select File System here. We'll drop that down and then we'll click FAT32. And then we can name it whatever we want to. Let's name it BIOS and Drivers, BND. And make sure you select Quick Format. That's incredibly important because if not, it's going to take a while. Then we click Start. And okay, so this takes a few seconds, maybe about 10 or so. Okay, and when that's done, we'll click OK here and we'll click Close. Now, if you go in here, you'll see it's completely empty because we've deleted it. Now, one incredibly important thing, if we come under Downloads, you'll see that all these things here. Now, this is the BIOS. Now, it looks like a regular file. You don't know, and if you double click on it, it takes you here. Now, the thing is, all of these, those are zip files. Now these are executables, but these are zip files. The BIOS doesn't read zip files, it reads the files inside of the zip files. So in order to make this a little easier for you for today and tomorrow, I'm gonna show you how to show file types. Then we'll select View, click on that drop down, then Show, and then File Name Extensions. Now you see how these files have .zip, .stl, .exe, and so on. So now we're going to double click on this and we can either leave it in this folder or in case we need to do a BIOS flashback, we'll just copy this to the root of the thumb drive. So we'll go back to this PC and then we'll paste it here because we've already copied it. Now coming back over here, now that we've done the chipset and the video drivers, we'll go to Corsair firmware update. Now the iCUE hub and a few other things, they might have some firmware that we're not exactly sure on. So I'm gonna copy this website and we're gonna run it on that machine during the install. And then to make our lives a lot easier, I like to download 7-zip and then copy that over as well so that when we bring over everything, we can just install 7-zip. So 1 second. All right, so I copied everything over to the thumb drive and I extracted everything, so I just organized it a little bit. So here is the RAID driver. In case we need it during the installation, we have everything here. Here's the ASMedia SATA firmware update. Here are the audio drivers, all extracted. The BIOS, just the BIOS file and the text file. Then we have the Bluetooth drivers, the Wi-Fi drivers, 7-zip so that we can uncompress things if we need it, the chipset driver, the graphics driver, the firmware update website. Here is the BIOS file loose on the root of the drive, like I mentioned, the iCUE setup for the RGB software, and MSI Center, everything out in the open. So now that we have both thumb drives, this one has FAT32, the latest BIOS in all of the drivers, and this has Windows 11. Now we're going to install this on the brand new PC. When plugging in your machine for the first time, I recommend don't use the Ethernet cable, at least during the install. Then plug in your monitor. Now, just in case, you're going to have a port right up here, but you're also going to have a port down here. Since we have a graphics card, you're going to plug it into right over here, whichever HDMI or display port, because I'm using my capture card just for the install. I'm using HDMI. Then we plug in all of the USB connections. Now we're going to leave the USB flash for the thumb drive because that's where it's going to be looking for the BIOS. Now that's just in case we have to use BIOS flashback. If we don't use BIOS flashback, we can use any USB port. So I'm just going to connect that right up here. I think it's the top one. We can always fix that a little bit later. And then we'll just connect all the rest of the USB connections. And lastly, we'll connect the power supply cable or the power cable to the power supply. And you're going to want to make sure if your power supply is on the off connection, switch it on. And if it's on, just leave it on. And we're going to plug in the Windows 11 thumb drive into the front, or we can always plug it into the back, but it's easier for me to get to up front here. No matter how many times, you always get it wrong the first few times. All right, we're gonna turn it on for the very first time. Nice. Okay, and when you see the MSI or the whatever logo pop up on your screen, you're gonna start tapping the delete key, or you might wanna start tapping it immediately, just every other second. And we're not going to be doing any of this, at least for right now. So I'm gonna click out of there. So when we're in the BIOS, we might show up under easy mode or advanced, but regardless, we're going to want to flash the BIOS. So we'll come over here to this thumb drive where we'll see M flash. So we'll click on that. The system will auto reboot. So select yes, and don't worry if it shuts down. That's perfectly normal. It's going to do that a few times. Okay, so we saw it entering flash. And now under here, if it doesn't come up, because right now it looks like it's coming up to the Windows install, and that's okay. So we'll select, let's see, General U disk 5.0. That's already what it's on. So we'll select generic flash disk, and now we'll see the BIOS folder that we had in there and the BIOS out in the root over here. So we can see the current BIOS is 2.A11 back in January 21st. Now the newest BIOS is version 2.A20, which came out last month, March 12th. 2025. So we want to update the BIOS. So double click on the BIOS here. Now it's asking us, are you sure you want to select this file? Yes, that's the one we selected. And now it's going to start the BIOS update process. This might take a few minutes. Now you may or may not hear the system. It's incredibly quiet. That's beautiful. All right, again, it shut down. Perfectly normal. And now we'll start tapping the delete key again every other second to get into the BIOS. And we're gonna go ahead, PBO enable. You can either be under easy mode or advanced. I'll click advanced over here, and then I'll go to save and exit. Now I'm going to select restore defaults, and then that's going to load optimized defaults and click OK. As BIOSes get updated, the defaults change often, and a lot of things may not be seen until you click load optimal defaults. So I like to do that so we can see everything. Then after we do that, we'll click escape. We'll go back to system status, and then here we'll select system date. It's correct here, but just in case if it isn't, you need to make sure it's correct. That way Windows has the correct date so it doesn't rush you on the activation. Then here we can see the M.2 SSD that we built it with. That's cool. And we can see the other M.2 SSD. We're going to install it on the Corsair. Regardless, we'll click escape here. Then we'll go to advanced. Now, because not all systems are going to be the same unless you have the exact specifications I have here, which I'll have links down in the description below so you could check it out. I'm going to configure the BIOS for my particular system. If you have any questions though, please don't hesitate to ask. I reply to everything. And just going to go through these settings real quick. You always want to make sure you have resize bar support enabled. A lot of games are requiring it now to get good performance. Make sure that's enabled. Hopefully your card and everything supports it. Just ask me below if you're not sure. We'll select Gen 5 for this one. We can select Gen 5 here as well. These are backwards compatible, so it's not going to cause an issue. All right, and we'll come out of here. Under integrated peripherals, for graphics card detection, since we already have a graphics card in here, we're going to select ignore. We'll leave onboard LAN controller enabled since we will be plugging in an Ethernet cable. Onboard Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, we'll leave that to auto since we'll be utilizing both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. We will be working under AHCI, not RAID, although we're not going to be using the SATA port at all for this particular build. And we will leave HD audio controller enabled. And for BIOS UEFI, we want UEFI because that's the interface we're in right now. And then the graphics card will require UEFI as well. And let's see, integrated graphics configuration. Since we're not using it, we'll have PEG. PEG is for the graphics card. IGD is for the internal graphics card off of the CPU. Integrated graphics, disable. Hybrid graphics, we'll leave that disabled as well. Coming out of here, overclocking.
Under overclocking, even though we're not going to be overclocking in this video, this is going to have a lot of performance improvements for your PC. So down here under X3D gaming mode, since we do have an X3D processor, it might benefit you for gaming purposes, where maybe you might not need as many core counts to enable it. But if you're also going to be using this processor for workstation applications, it might benefit you to leave that disabled. That's something you're going to want to play with on your side. I'll go ahead and leave it disabled on mine just for now. Now this is an important one for your RAM. This is an AMD processor and Expo is made for AMD, but it doesn't mean the memory has an Expo profile. It could very well have an XMP profile like it does in this case. So we'll go ahead and enable XMP. Then we'll see profile number 1 has DDR5 6000 megatransfers. We know that works perfectly fine since it does have an XMP profile. So coming down a little bit more, we see that enabling XMP sets the speed for the RAM, so we don't need to touch that. But coming down a little bit more, we can see memory context restore. So memory context restore is currently set to auto, and it's different on every single motherboard. On this particular board, if you have memory context restore set to disable, every time you boot up your PC, it's going to retrain your RAM, so it makes it take longer. In this case, we're going to want to enable it, which will stop the memory retraining and make your boot ups a lot quicker. And since we set the XMP profile, we don't need to set any of this. Security, trusted computing. We want to make sure the security device support is set to enable. AMD FTPM switch is set to AMD CPU FTPM. And let's see anything else over here. Nope, we're good here. And boot. We're going to want to boot off of the Windows 11 installer. And I believe that's it. If not, we can always come back and change it. And then we'll press exit here. Now save and exit, and then we'll save changes and reboot, and then we'll select OK. All right, so now this is the new Windows 11 installer. Looks a little bit different. So right now we don't see anything. So we're gonna unselect hide drivers that are incompatible. And well, we don't see anything. That's where we need to plug in the thumb drive that has the SATA RAID drivers that I showed you earlier. After plugging that in, we'll give it a few seconds, and now we'll select browse. Now we'll go to my drivers, and then we'll go to AMD RAID drivers, NVMe DID, and then we'll select RC RAID and click OK. Here we can see AMD RAID controller. We'll select that, and then we'll click install. Language to install, time and currency, we'll select next. Keyboard or input method, select your input method and next. Install Windows 11 and repair my PC. We want to install Windows 11. I agree, everything will be deleted, including file, apps, and everything. So perfect. Then we'll select next. If you have a product key, insert it here. I don't right now. I don't have a product key. We'll select that here. And then you'll select your version of Windows. I'm installing 11. If you don't have a key, you can select 11 Pro and then insert a key later on after you buy it. Next. Okay, read this incredibly important information and click accept. All right, so here it's finding all of the media that we had before. So the Corsair one doesn't have anything on it. So this is my other one. I don't care about this, and this one here is part of that disk one, unallocated. So I'm going to select this one because I know what's on it. It's got games, cool. I'm gonna delete that partition, and then everything's gone off of that one. Perfect. Now my Corsair drive is disk 0. If we remember, so we select this 0 and then we'll click next. Okay, ready to install. Now it's going to go over everything that we've selected. So perfect, that's what I want to do. So we'll select install. This will take a few minutes and it will restart as it mentions here. Now this installer is new, but it's basically the same thing, just a new skin. The install takes about 7 minutes, give or take, depending on your hardware. I have USB 2.0 thumb drive, so it might take me a little bit longer. If you have USB 3 or anything along those lines, thumb drives, it might take you a lot less time. Normally it takes about 7 minutes. All right, so then here we'll select our country or region. I'll select United States. Keyboard layout. Second keyboard layout, I'm good, thanks. Let's connect you to a network. I don't have one, but it's still making this. Don't worry, I can help you here as well. So here we'll select Shift F10. Now we'll click in the command prompt. That way we're selecting the window. Then we'll type in start space ms-cxh colon local only and press enter. So who's going to use this PC? Well, ThisBytesForYou is silly, and enter a password if you'd like, but I'll skip that and click next. Hi. So that was Microsoft's attempt at stopping people from using local accounts. There was a different way before. Now they've updated it. This is the latest and greatest. If it's changed since you've seen this video, let me know down below. All right, location. You can select whatever you'd like here, but for this video, I'm selecting everything default, and that's it. We've installed Windows 11. So now what we're going to want to do is go to File Explorer, go to My Drivers, and we're going to copy all of this. Then we're going to go to this PC, go to your C drive, right click, new folder, then I'll rename it Drivers, and then I'll paste everything here. Give me 1 sec, I'll be right back. Now you don't have to copy all the drivers to your C drive or to your D drive or anything. You can leave it on the thumb drive, but I do recommend, at least for the chipset driver, since that does install and update your chipset driver, to copy your chipset driver to your C drive and install from your C drive. Now, one thing I like to do here is I like to click on the start button and type UAC, change user account control settings, and then I like to put this all the way down so that it doesn't ask me 1,000 questions. And I'll click OK here and yes. Now, before we install these drivers, aside from it installing software that's needed for the machine, if you right click on your start button and you go to Device Manager, you'll see all these bangs, these errors, because, hey, I don't have the driver installed for the network controller PCI device. What's that? PCI encryption decryption controller? What's that? SM bus? Unknown. The drivers take care of all that, and that's incredibly important, not only for the security of your PC, but to get everything working and for performance. So we'll close out of here, and just remember that. So now we're installed. The very first one you should install, and I'll do this in order, is the chipset driver. That's basically the foundation of your system. You want to build your house on a solid foundation. We're doing that here. So these are all the drivers that, a lot of that is what we saw those errors in, and a lot of unknown. So we're going to just click install here. And this might take a minute, and realize during this install, a little pop-up is probably going to pop up over here saying restart your computer. Don't do that until this is complete, and then I'll show you the way I restart the computer. It says chipset driver was installed successfully, so click close here. So you might have noticed the chipset software asked me to restart. Always restart when the software asks you to, but I don't restart from the software. I restart from Windows, because that way you know that there is nothing else installing because you've closed that software. That way you don't cause any issues. Okay, so now we'll right click on the start button, shut down or sign out, and then restart. 1 sec. It only takes a few seconds. So now we'll come back to File Explorer, this PC, C drive, and drivers. So now we've installed chipset, so we'll delete that. And then we'll go ahead and install audio. We'll double click on that setup file. Next. And no, I'll restart my computer later. Finish. And then I'll right click, shut down or sign out, and restart. Okay, now that we've installed audio, we can delete that. Then we'll go for Bluetooth, MSI setup, driver, and install. Okay, and we can close out of here. And then we'll go back over here, and then we'll install Wi-Fi. I've included actually Wi-Fi and the LAN in here. So let's go ahead and install 7-zip real quick. That's so that we can extract. So install and close. Now we'll come back to Wi-Fi, right click on Qualcomm, show more options, 7-zip, and then extract to Qualcomm. And then we'll do the same to Realtek. Okay, now we can delete these zip files. And I mentioned zip, so let's go to View, Show, File Name Extensions, and then View, Show, Hidden Items. All right, so let's install the Ethernet driver, so PCIe LAN, and then scroll down to setup.exe. Next, install. We'll click finish here, and then Wi-Fi, MSI setup driver, and install. Finish, we're good here, and we'll close it. And now we'll install the graphics driver as the last driver. We'll select additional options, factory reset. Even though it's a clean install, I like to do factory reset just to get rid of anything that could be in there. We'll select default, and you can leave whatever you'd like here. I'm going to uncheck it and then accept and install. Okay, and then I'll uncheck these two. We'll click close, and we're gonna go ahead and restart, even though this one didn't ask us to. Restart here, shut down our sign out, and restart. All right, so now back to the grind. So we can get rid of this as well. And we've already installed the RAID drivers. We've installed Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. We've installed 7-zip, and now we'll install iCUE setup. All right, and select your language. All right, next here. Now let's go ahead and plug in the Ethernet cable or connect to Wi-Fi, whichever you can do. Now that we're on Ethernet, we'll click retry, and I'll select I'll decide later, next. Congratulations, installation successful. So we'll click finish here. All right, now that we're done with that, we'll come to MSI Center. Okay here, and install and finish. Okay, now I'll get rid of these three since we're done there. Now we'll go to the As Media firmware update, run this guy here. 1 second while it finishes scanning the functions. Okay, and then the upgrade is successful, and let's reboot. So 1 second, close out of here. I didn't need to open that, it took care of itself. So restart. Now that we're back in Windows, it's opening up the MSI Center, but I'm going to close that since we didn't install it. Now we'll go back into File Explorer, this PC, C drive, drivers. Let's get rid of the As Media. Actually, we did install the MSI. I forgot, but that's okay. We'll get rid of the BIOS, and then we'll go to Corsair Firmware Update Utility. Start without your data. We haven't installed Chrome yet, so I'm going to uncheck that, confirm and continue. Continue without this data, uncheck that, confirm start in browsing. Now let's authorize to see a list of supported devices. Okay, didn't find anything it needs, so we can just go ahead and close that. We don't need it, thankfully. And 1 quick second. So now if we come back over here, right click, device manager, everything is gone. Everything is going to work perfectly. So now we can come over here, the start button, then we'll go to MSI Center, open it up down here, and then scroll all the way down. And then I have read and agree and click OK. That was a lot of garbage there. This might take a minute while it installs and prepares itself. Start now. And I'll skip all this stuff. And 1 second, let me change my ratio here. So you get this same thing, right click on your desktop, go to display settings and scaling. Let's raise that to, or lower that to 125. There, now it's a little bit more manageable. And so now we'll scroll down a tiny bit, and I'm going to skip Mystic Lighting for right now, but normally I install it. I want to see what iCUE is going to do for us. Then I'll come back over here. We'll go to support. We'll go to live update, and then we're going to do a quick scan just to make sure that we're good. We have the latest and greatest. Do not install Norton 365, and if you'd like to, you can install IDA 64 from here. I have the registered version, so I'll use that on my own. Definitely IDA 64 is great, Norton is not. And then you can install the Realtek audio control from here. I'm going to skip that just for right now. All right, so let's check out iCUE real quick. All right, so first off, here we can see the RAM we're using, and there's an update. So let's update now. And then we'll go down here. Let's close out of this iCUE and come to this, and then next you have an older version installed. Next uninstalls the older version and installs the newer version. It's great to keep your hardware and your software always updated. I'm a stickler for updates. I like to keep my hardware and my software updated, not only for updates, but for performance of Windows. So let's keep going, and there's going to be a little bit more here too. Beautiful. So here it shows our iCUE Core, iCUE Link, iCUE Link RX RGB, and Dominator. So I'm going to select next there. And like we did before, restart later and manually restart. So now we'll go to iCUE. All right, and you saw all the RGB just turn off for a split second, which is cool. We'll click here, right click here, and bring iCUE to foreground. All right, and there's another update. So one sec, this is for the firmware update now. Quit other application, control of your PC. So we make sure we close out of MSI Center. And so we're good there. And now got it. Turned off all of the fans. That's normal. It's a little bit scary. All right, so everything seems to be completely updated. And just in case, we'll click on the little gear up here. We'll go to software updates. And let's go ahead and check for updates again, just in case. Everything is good. Latest version, perfect. So now we'll go in here to the iCUE link. And we can see all of the RGB, all of the fans, all of the everything connected here. Beautiful. So 4 over here and 5 over here. Now, if you saw my build video, you'll see why that's incredibly important. If you haven't seen that build video, check it down below. I'll also have it linked up at the very end. So let's keep going. And we can always play with this a little bit later on, but it's great to see that everything is here. All right, so that's everything here for iCUE Link. We've already done iCUE Link System Hub, and then we have the RAM over here. We can play with all the lighting effects and everything, but I'll leave this everything stock and standard as it is, and everything looks beautiful here. I really do like the way that iCUE does stuff, and so we can close over here. Now, it doesn't seem like we have any lighting that we need to worry about on the motherboard, so that's beautiful. Everything we need is within iCUE. And then if we ever need to, we can always come over here under MSI Center, open it up. Definitely great piece of software to have. And we can do live updates to check for the latest software. We can do hardware monitoring like we did before. We can check the fan temps, all that good stuff, and then install anything else we need here. Again, normally I would use Mystic Lighting, but thankfully we don't need it right now. Not thankfully because it's bad, but we don't need 2 separate ones to clog things up. So we're good here. Now, the other thing I like to do is click Start, type Update. We'll check for updates. And I always like to get the latest update as soon as they're available. Check for updates. This will take a minute. All right, and now it's downloading all of the updates. So it downloads all of the updates that we need, which is great. And then in a second, we're going to have to restart. All of the updates will apply. Anytime and every time you do a Windows update, after you restart and you're back in Windows, go back in and make sure there aren't any additional updates. Incredibly important, and we'll do that in a second. All right, now that we're done here, we'll go ahead and click Restart Now. One sec, be right back. All right, so that only took about 5 minutes. Super quick, super easy. So now, like I mentioned before, just make sure we're back on the internet. And I did forget to select one thing over here, so let's maximize it. And let's go to Advanced Options and Receive Updates for Other Microsoft Products. We'll check that there. We'll click back over here and we'll do another check for updates. All right, cool. So it does an update for Defender. Most of the time you do a scan in here, it'll do an update for Defender, which is a good thing. And then we can close out of here. So I got off of my capture card and I'm on DisplayPort now so that I could show you a little more tweaking and tuning now that we have everything working perfectly fine here. We don't need to worry about drivers. Everything is perfect. One thing we can install Ryzen Master, but I'll skip that. We're not really going to be overclocking or playing with those settings right now. One of the main things I like to do is right click on the desktop. We'll go over to display settings and then scroll down a tiny bit. We'll go to advanced display. It will always default to 59 or 60. So you want to make sure you come in here and set the highest possible refresh rate your monitor can support. So we'll select that here, then click keep changes. All right, so that already is going to help you out a ton, but we have some more work to do. Now, since we're using AMD and we're using the AMD Software Adrenaline Edition, we'll click on that. So we'll right click on the background, AMD Software. Okay, we're going to skip this. There's a ton that this software can do, but we're going to skip it for now. HyperRX will definitely help you out a ton, but we're going to skip that here. We're going to go click on the little gear over here or the cog and click settings. And then we're going to go to display
It's already set up for me by default, but we want to make sure that AMD FreeSync Premium Pro, if your monitor supports it, is enabled. That is also going to give you a ton of additional performance. Closing out of here, those will give you more graphical performance. We're going to go over some power settings real quick. I like to keep mine at balance, but some people like to ramp it up so that the processor is always at its max speed. I like to let mine idle down so that they stay cool all the time and then also take less power. But let me show you real quick. So for that, we'll click on the start button and we'll type power, and then we'll select edit power plan. Okay, I don't like any of this, so I turn everything off. And then I save changes, but then I come back over here. I like to leave it at balanced, but if you've installed all the chipset and all the drivers, if you click show additional plans, you have ultimate and you have high performance. Ultimate performance is great. It works great. Again, I like balance, but ultimate performance, when you click change plan settings, again, I turn off all this part, but then I come under change advanced power settings. No matter what setting I'm in, I turn off hard disk after I set this to 0. That's turning it off. I also set sleep to never. I turn off link state power management. Processor, they like to set it to 0 and setting to 100. I like to put it to 5. So they might have changes a little bit, but I like to set the lowest to 5. And then I click apply and OK. Now coming back to power options, we'll go to change what power buttons do. Change settings, currently unavailable. I like to turn on fast start because that causes everything to stay in memory so that if your computer restarts or do whatever and you had a notepad running, it'll stay running when you get back into Windows, it'll pop up. So I like to disable that. And then another thing, you saw me use Edge because that's all I had. I like to download Chrome, and you don't need to use Chrome, but I'm not a fan so much of Edge, so I'll download and install Chrome real quick. It takes a few seconds. Don't sign in, set as default. Then in a few seconds, set as default pops up here, and that'll change all of this to Chrome. A few stay Edge, you can keep that there if you'd like. Got it. I do have 2 SSDs in here, I almost forgot. So to get that second one working, I right click on the start button, I click on disk management, maximize that. You'll notice unallocated space here. If we open up File Explorer, you'll see we don't see that second drive. This is the thumb drives. So I'll leave those there so that I can show you how to reassign drive letters. So I close that there. I right click under disk 1. And if it was offline, I set it to online. So it's already online. And then I right click on this unallocated space, new simple volume. Next, leave whatever size you want here or partition it. And then assign drive letter. I'll change that in 1 second. Next, and I'll label this secondary storage. I'll make sure I perform quick format. Next, finish. It'll do a quick format and now it's done. So we can come back into File Explorer and now we see our secondary storage. But I want this to be the D drive. So I right click on the start button. I go back to disk management. Now, because I don't care what drive letter my thumb drive is, I'll right click on that thumb drive and then I'll change drive letter and paths, change, and then I'll switch it to the G. Now this is important. It says drive letter and paths. So if this was a hard drive and I changed it and I had something installed on it, it wouldn't work. So make sure you only do that when you know exactly what you're doing there. Now for the secondary drive, since there's nothing on that, we can confirm by right clicking on it and clicking open, nothing here. Now we want to rename this to drive D. So we right click on it, change drive letter and paths, change, and we'll select D here. Okay, yes, and okay. Close this out. And you might need to refresh your screen, but now here is your C drive and here is your secondary storage. Now there's a ton of other options and settings and drivers and software and everything we can install and configure. We could be here all night long, but I wanted to show you the basics on everything you should do to get your system up and running and 100% operational, and a few little tweaks and tuning and everything to make sure you get some great performance out of your brand new system. So I hope that's helped you get going. Remember, we were all noobs at one point. I try to never forget that. So I try to show you as basic as I can. And this is going to help people that have never done this before. We call them noobs. I was a noob too once. So are you. and then people that have been doing this for years that might not know some of these things or might have forgotten. So I try to make sure that I cover all of my grounds and help you out so that you can have your best PC experience. So let me know if there's any tweaks and tunes and everything that you'd like to do on your machine. Now, in the meantime, if you want to check out this video here, this is how I built this machine. And then right below that, there'll be the latest and greatest video, which might actually be this video. But anyway, check out that video to learn how I built this machine and the fumbles I went through it, because I did go through a few. But anyway, this is Iggy with ThisBytesForYou, showing you how to already build your machine, but now showing you how to install Windows, flash the BIOS, configure the BIOS, update your software, do everything to your brand new PC. Iggy with ThisBytesForYou out. See you guys.